get zero at the table, man, all kinds of shit breaks loose.
Pick me.
Zero's at the table, you gotta be careful. Tons of shit breaks loose, baby.
Greetings, humans, and welcome back. I'm Joey Pigtails, and this is episode number 28 of my poker vlog, bringing you more double-board PLO bomb pots from Orange City Racing and Card Club sometime during November. Speaking of Orange City, it seems as if a lot of you don't actually know where this card room is, and if that is true, how are you going to join me for the MoneyMaker Tour starting tomorrow? Look at this map. See, here's Orlando, where many of you visit regularly. See this up here? That's Daytona. You all know these places. Roughly in between these two locations, a few miles north of the St. Johns Rivers Bridge in Sanford, you'll find the exit for Orange City. Jump off there and head west a couple miles, and there you'll find us. I'll talk more about the Moneymaker Tour after the hands, but let's go ahead and jump in. Alright humans, you've heard me mention being cautious in hands where we only have equity on one board. Here's another great example of that. I just have a pair and a gut shot on top, and I have trips on bottom with a king kicker. Sure, this isn't even top trips, but we're likely ahead on that board right now and drawing to a bigger boat. It's check to the player on my right who bets 75. I call, as does Bill on my left. Then the small blind check jams for 165. The next player calls 165, and the initial bettor folds. Okay then. I call, then Bill jams for 350-ish, and I go ahead and call that too. Well, so much for being cautious. The dealer gets the pots right, and we're off to turns and rivers of a 9 and a 2 on top, improving my hand there to trips, and a 2 and an ace on bottom, both of which are spades, and I improve to a nut flush, which is good enough to win the bottom board and half of all the pots. Here's another great example of having most of our equity on one board. Top and bottom pair on top isn't all that strong, and the bottom board gives me a gut shot, but not enough to get excited about. When it's checked around, we can now get excited when we drill the number 2 full house on top. The bottom board pairs the queen, so our equity on that board is dead. It's checked to the player in seat 6 who bets 100. Wait, you bet what? Full stop here. Let's talk about this, people, because this is a mistake every single time at these stacked ups. I don't care if you have the nuts on both boards. A bet this big is wrong. Hand reading says this guy has some sort of queen. He might have a jack as well, which I block, but he is obviously strong. The problem is that a bet this big is never getting called multiple ways by hands he beats, so if he does get multiple calls, he better have the stone cold nuts on both, or else this is a punt. And since the flop was checked around, that's unlikely. If he only gets one call and doesn't have both boards, any further action usually gets chopped up, so those heads-up actions just lead to wasted time. Now, this conversation is different if we are in early position. Big bets early are okay, but survey the field first. Try to identify if anyone looks interested in continuing. From late position with value hands, I recommend betting small to get multi-way action from worse hands, and to build a pot to either chop up or steal by leveraging our stack for a river jam. I'm the only caller, and we see rivers of a 9 on top and an ace on bottom. Thankfully, my opponent checks. Now, betting here is an option, and I should have considered doing it at the time, but I didn't. And now that I've reviewed this hand numerous times making this vlog, I've identified a leak that I'm going to plug. I show my boat, and my opponent chuckles and says chop it up. He did in fact have the other jack, and also had a queen, so he could have improved his scoop, but the original point about bet sizing stands. In the next hand I flop top 2 pair on top, and top pair plus a flush draw on bottom. We see a bet of $50 from seat 3. See, that's more like it. There's a call from seat 6, I call, and seat 2 comes along as well. With turns of a 3 on top and the 8 of spades on bottom, I've improved on bottom to a flush, so I go ahead and fire 125 when the field checks to me. How strong can they be when they all check the turn, right? Seat 3 calls, and seat 6 is all in for 40. With the rivers being relative bricks, I jam when checked to. I can get called by worse on both boards here, and I can also get better hands to fold for the side pot and potentially half or even all of the main pot, so the bet serves a bunch of purposes. My opponent eventually folds, and I show my hand. We didn't get to see what seat 6 had, as my hand was better, so he mucked and I ended up scooping the entire pot here. Another important thing to remember about bomb pots is that we want to avoid putting a lot of money in on the flop in situations where we can get stacked or quartered. Here's a great example of that. On top, I'm open-ended, but the board is paired, so our equity there is questionable at best. But on the bottom board, I flop a nut straight with a redraw. But note we don't have any clubs in hand, and there's one club on top though. Also important, I'm first to act here. That's a miserable spot to be in when we know we aren't ever folding the specific hand due to the redraw I mentioned. We want to get to the turn cheaply, as aggressive actions tend to get more respect from draws there or on the river. So I check, and it's check to the player in seat 8 who bets $40. Now that's a sizing I like. 3 of us make the call, and we see turns of a 7 on top and a 3 on bottom, and my nutted hand remains intact. I check with devious intentions, the player on my left checks, and seat 8 is all in for 90. Seat 1 folds, and I decide on a call here. Seat 4 now goes into the tank, but eventually folds. The rivers come out, and when the club hits on bottom, seat 4 is not happy as he folded that club draw there, which leads me to my next point. I should have just shoved the turn and forced the fold instead of giving him more than enough odds to call there. The passive actions taken usually mean an aggressive action will force a fold, and I even said it. I prefer to fold. I end up chopping this up as the other player had a boat on top but didn't have anything on the board I have a straight on. Here's another single board equity hand flopping the nut straight on bottom. I have an extra 3 in my hand, so it's less likely I'm sharing this straight with others. We see a bet of, wait, what? 15? This table is friendly, so I go ahead and make the call and expect for this to get called a bunch of ways to see a turn. But honestly, this is begging for someone to put it to the test. Anyone behind us can elect a pot at the $200+ or more, and everyone instantly gets put into a blender. Thankfully, nobody decides to take this line. The board on top gets uglier, but the board on the bottom is clean for me, being a complete rainbow. We see a pot-sized bet, a fold, and I call, but the 4th player folds. My opponent jams before the rivers come out. I go ahead and call before the rivers come out, and the rivers end up clean. My opponent has 9s full on top, and we chop this one up. Buckle up, folks. Time to have your brain put in a blender. I flop everything in this bomb pot. All the 9s are gone. I have a pair and a nut flush draw on top, and trip 9s on bottom, only losing to one player who can have ace-ace on bottom. It's checked around to a late position player who pots it for 105, the button calls, and seat 8 is all in for 80. So, it's hard for all 3 players to have equity on top given my hand. I have 3 hearts and 2 cards blocking the straight draws there. So who has the aces? Is it the short stack player or one of these much deeper stacks? I can't fold here. How do you feel about raising? We can be behind on both boards to the same player right now if they have ace-ace and the nut heart draw, so this could really suck. I do make the call, however, to evaluate. The turn cards don't change anything. I check hoping for a check back, but my opponent bets 175 and the other player calls. I love this bet sizing from an ace-ace combo. So do either of these players have that? I decide to make the fold here. What would you have done in this spot? I'm thinking that I should have made the decision to fold on the flop if I was going to fold to a blank turn card, so decision points here are questionable. I didn't get the footage, but the other 2 players ended up all in on the river. One player had top set of jacks and hit a boat on top, and the short stack player who was all in for 80 had the ace-ace combo, so I would have taken half of all the side pots if I continued, but the result of that would have only been me making about $50 on the hand. That's not very good ROI. Man, that last hand was a doozy. Anywho, MoneyMaker Tour kicks off tomorrow and opens with a $500 no-limit hold'em $200,000 guarantee event. I'm not actually looking to play that tomorrow, but rather I'm going to play the $300 08 event, which is a 4-card pot limit Omaha high-low on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Then the $300 PLO tournament on Thursday, which should also be at 1 o'clock. And then I'm also going to be playing the $300 3-game mix event, which is PLO, PLO 8, and Big O on Friday. There's also a $500 PLO double black chip bounty event on Saturday, but I'm not certain that I'm going to be playing that as of right now. Anywho, I'm hoping to get onto a live stream and maybe even do some commentating, so I hope to see you all there. If you do come, make sure to introduce yourself and say hello. Until then, I'm Joey Pigtails, and I am transparent, reminding you to be a good human. Bye!